What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Go Lead Everything podcast. I'm Phil Swanson, your host, back again with a quick one for you today, but a really good mindset, real truth for you. Before we jump in, make sure you go to YouTube, search Phil Swanson GLE. You can find me just searching Phil Swanson too. There's this other dude on there, plays guitar. I know I got guitars back here, but that's not me. Go to Phil Swanson channel on YouTube. You'll see me in the black suit. Subscribe and share it out. Hope you enjoy the content there. Really working on growing the YouTube channel this year. You can also find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Pocket Casts, basically everywhere you want to go listen to a podcast. So make sure if you like the show, you want more people to see it, go subscribe on those platforms, leave a review and rating so that the show can bump up in the rankings. All right, y'all. I got a gem for you today. This is this is from a book called High Output Management by Andy Grove. I just started reading this book and I thought this was so good. I just had to share it. For all you aspiring leaders out there, leaders in your field, maybe you're already in management, managing people, leading people in organizations. I wanted to share this, and it's from the foreword of this book. It's not even from the meat yet, but it was just too good not to share. So I'm just going to read a couple pages. I hope you enjoy. And here we go. It doesn't accomplish anything to declare that we need more kids going to college than to jail and demand that we build more schools than jails. In fact, it's counterproductive. Identifying complex system problems is one thing. Solving them is something else entirely. Andy lays out the tools to do just that. Over the years, I've come to consider high output management as a true masterpiece, and there are at least three core aspects to its genius. First, in as little as one sentence, it lucidly explains concepts that require entire books from lesser writers. Secondly, it consistently uncovers brand new management ideas or finds new insights into old standards. Finally, while most management books attempt to teach basic competency, high output management teaches the reader how to be great. Andy introduces management with this classic equation. What is management, y'all? This is really what I wanted to get to. A manager's output equals the output of his organization plus the output of the neighboring organizations under his influence. On the surface, it may seem simple, but he clarifies the essential difference between a manager and an individual contributor. A manager's skills and knowledge are only valuable if she uses them to get more leverage from her people. So, Miss Manager, you know more about our product's viral loop than anyone in the company? That's worth exactly nothing unless you can effectively transfer that knowledge to the rest of the organization. That's what being a manager is about. It's not about how smart you are or how well you know your business. It's about how that translates to the team's performance and output. As a means to obtain this leverage, a manager must understand when a person is not doing his job, there can be only two reasons for it. Only two. A person can either can't do it or he won't do it. Read that again. There's only two reasons people aren't doing their job. They either can't do it or they won't do it. He is either not capable or not motivated. This insight enables a manager to dramatically focus her efforts. All you can do to improve the output of an employee is to motivate and train. Motivate, train. I'm going to pause there. There's nothing else, it says. How many of you out there focus your energy as managers to motivating and training your employees? How much time in your day? Or are you constantly just doing? Do. Busy. So much going on. Are you really motivating and training your people? It's an interesting point. I've seen far too many people who, upon recognizing today's gap, try very hard to determine what decision to be made to close it. But today's gap represents a failure of planning sometime in the past. Hopefully, the value of this short insight is not lost on the young reader. If you only understand one thing about building products, you must understand that energy put in early in the process pays off tenfold, and energy put in at the end of the program pays off negative tenfold. The book has an entire section dedicated to often neglected but critically important management tool, meetings. Everybody hates meetings, right? Well, let's talk about this because this is something I stumbled upon just by happenstance, and I've communicated it to many people. So if you're listening to this and you know me, I've probably talked to you about the effectiveness of this before, but let's keep reading. Annie makes us see the oldest of business principles in the beginning with how to conduct a one-on-one. It seems incredible that the CEO of Intel would take the time to explain how to have a one-on-one meeting. Why is he doing this? It turns out that the one-on-one is not only a fundamental element in the manager-employee relationship, but perhaps the best source for organizational knowledge that a manager can get. In my experience, managers who don't have one-on-ones understand very little about what's happening in their organizations. It is by understanding the simple things that Annie goes deep. For example, when people visit today's technology companies, they often remark about how casual the environments are, but with very little explanation about why they are that way. In fact, many CEOs do not understand why, as they simply follow the trend. But Andy explains it perfectly. A journalist puzzled by our management style once asked me, Mr. Grove, isn't your company's emphasis on visible signs of egalitarianism, such as informal dress, partitions instead of offices, just so much affection? My answer was that this is not affection, affectation. Just so much affectation. My answer was that this is not affectation, but a matter of survival. In our business, we have to mix knowledge power people with position power people daily, and together they make decisions that could affect us for years to come. In this fashion, the book quickly gets to the heart of complex issues. Andy asked the question of whether you should be friends with the people you manage. Everyone must decide for himself what is professional and appropriate here. A test might be to imagine yourself delivering a tough performance review to your friends at work. Do you cringe at the thought? If so, don't make friends at work. If your stomach remains unaffected, you are likely to be someone whose personal relationships will strengthen work relationships. By breaking down the process, he makes hard things manageable. Ultimately, the power of high output management is that it creates expert rather than merely competent managers. A great example of this is the section on task relevant maturity. This part of the book became very personal for me as it taught me how to formulate the most useful management questions, the most useful management question that I use in interviews. Is it better to be a hands-on or hands-off manager? It seems like a simple enough question, but it sorts out the 95% of managers who never think deeply about their craft from the 5% who do. So, what about you? I'll pause here. Do you want to be a hands-on or hands-off manager? Do you think about that? What's the right way to do it? The answer, as Andy explains, is that it depends. Specifically, it depends on the employee. If the employee is immature in the task, then hands-on training is essential. If the employee is more mature, then a delegate approach is warranted. Andy presents a great example of this. The subordinate did poor work. My associate's reaction. He has to make his own mistakes. That's how he learns. The problem with this is that the subordinate's tuition is paid by his customers, and that is absolutely wrong. I'm going to read this one again 'cause it's just so good. The problem with letting a subordinate learn by his own mistakes is that his tuition is being paid by his customers. And that's absolutely wrong. Perhaps the chapter that best reflects Andy Grove is the last. Why Training is the Boss's Job is the name of this chapter. Often people who manage in the so-called knowledge economy believe their employees are so smart they need no training at all. Andy brilliantly corrects this notion by explaining why, as customers, we are flabbergasted when we encounter employees who are insufficiently trained at relatively simple tasks, such as taking restaurant reservations. He then challenges us to imagine how furious customers of complex jobs will be if an employee isn't properly trained. Finally, he reiterates this thesis that there are only two ways in which a manager can impact an employee's output: motivation and training. If you are not training, then you are basically neglecting half the job. Did you hear that, folks? I'm going to read this one again. If you are not training your people as a leader, as a manager, then you are basically neglecting half the job. And when I say training, I don't think he means here like, you know, there's multiple kinds of training. A lot of people like to farm it out. Oh, go take a class. Oh, go to this training course. Oh, go do this. But training is one-on-one. Training is working with your people, right? Helping your people along, teaching them how things should be done, how to think, how to make decisions, how to consider, how to collaborate, how. All the how is about training your people, right? Throughout the chapter, the reader feels Andy's intense passion towards training and teaching because, in the end, more than anything else, he is a teacher in the very best sense of the word. And what that's saying there is if you're a leader, you're a teacher. Leaders know the way, go the way, and show the way, right? They teach. Many years after reading High Output Management, I met Andy for the first time. Upon seeing him, I was so excited that I immediately blurted out how much I loved the book. In the classic Andy style, he shot back, "Why?" I did not expect that. I thought he would say thank you or I appreciate that, but not why. But that was Andy. He was always teaching and always expecting more from every student. Completely caught off guard, I scrambled for the reason and came across a good one. Every other management book that I've read explains the trivial, but yours gets to the real issues. Upon hearing that, the master teacher softened and replied with a priceless story. It's funny that you say that about management books. I recently ran out of space on my bookshelf at home, so I was faced with a choice. I either had to throw away some books or buy a bigger house. Well, that was an easy decision, but which books to throw out? Then I thought the management books. But I had a problem. Nearly every management book that I had received was sent to me by the author and was autographed with a kind inscription. I felt badly about throwing away all those nice notes. So I went through each book and tore out the inscription page, then threw away the book. So now I have a large stack of pages of nice notes to me and plenty of space for good books. I've never met anyone other than Andy Grove who would have a story like that. He uniquely balances the highest standards for clear thinking and performance with an undying belief in the underlying person. Who else would require so high a bar for writing that you had to be good enough to fit on his one bookshelf and still be so touched by the fact that you wanted him to read your work that he would save the page you inscribed? Later in 2001, I met with Andy again and I asked him about a recent run of CEOs missing their numbers despite having told investors that their businesses were strong. The bubble had burst for the first wave of internet companies nearly a year prior. So it surprised me that so many of them had not seen this coming. Andy replied with an answer that I did not expect. CEOs always act on leading indicators of good news, but only act on lagging indicators of bad news. Why? I asked him. He answered in the style resonant of his entire book. In order to build anything great, you have to be an optimist. Because by definition, you are trying to do something that most people would consider impossible. Optimists most certainly do not listen to leading indicators of bad news. But this insight won't be in any book. When I suggested he write something on the topic, his response was, "Why would I do that? It would be a waste of time to write about how to not follow human nature. It would be like trying to stop the Peter Principle. CEOs must be optimists, and all in all, that's a good thing." This is classic Andy Grove. He's amazing perspective. He is amazingly perceptive and can see every flaw in every person. Yet, despite that, he believes in human potential more than anyone. Maybe that's why he has spent so much time teaching us to be better. It has been an honor for me to learn from Andy Grove through the years, and I'm excited for everyone who is new to high output management to join me in this experience. I know that you'll enjoy this marvelous book written by the best teacher that I have ever known. That was from Ben Horowitz in 2015. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm enjoying this book so far. I'm getting a lot out of it. Some really, really good points in there, right? I hope you picked up on a couple. One, the effectiveness of a manager is the effectiveness of his organization and the organizations around him, right? The output. It's not helping anybody to declare problems unless you have solutions to those problems, right? Anybody can point out problems. There's only two reasons a person can't do his job. He either can't do it or won't do it. Those are the only two. How do you fix those? Motivation and training. All you can do to improve performance is motivate and train. How many of you leaders are motivating and training your people? How many of you leaders are conducting one-on-ones with your people? And when I say your people, I don't just mean your direct reports. I mean people in your organization, people sideways, horizontal in your organization, people up in your organization, people down in your organization. How often do you actually go to your people one-on-one and talk to them about what they got going on? Managers who don't have one-on-ones understand very little about what's happening in their organization. CEOs always acting on leading indicators of good news, but only acting on lagging indicators of bad news. CEOs must be optimists. They need to be optimists, right? Interesting. It's easy to be critical of CEOs, isn't it? Of high up leaders in organizations. A lot of things to think about. I'm enjoying this book. Wanted to share that with you this morning. I hope you got something out of it. Y'all, if you haven't yet, go to goleadeverything.com/gear. Grab some gear. I'm sporting some GLE gear this morning. Go grab some GLE gear, support the show, share it out. Go to Phil Swanson YouTube channel, PhilSwansonGLE. You can search that on YouTube. You'll find me, Black Suit, and hit subscribe so we can get some more subscribers to the YouTube channel and keep growing. Hope y'all are having a great day. And as you go, share the show and go lead everything.